The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with noise. Hundreds of alien voices spoke in different languages, creating a sound like angry bees. Ambassador Minho stood at the center of it all, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but today it felt like a uniform he would never wear again. The vote had just finished. 347 votes against humanity, only 12 votes in favor. The result was clear. After 300 years of service, humanity was being kicked out of their own colonies. The council had decided that humans were too dangerous to rule themselves. Minho looked up at the viewing gallery where his team sat. Sayora, the military attaché, was typing something on her tablet with quick fingers. Her face was calm, but Minho knew her well enough to see the anger in her eyes. Next to her, Jinwoo from Intelligence was whispering into his communication device. Even from this distance, Minho could see that Jinwoo's message was urgent. "The vote is final," announced Councillor Vektash, the tall blue alien who led the council. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "Humanity will surrender control of all colony worlds to council administration. Human military forces will be disbanded. Human ships will be limited to transport duties only." The alien delegates cheered. The Zephyrians flapped their wing arms in celebration. The rock-like granites made deep, rumbling sounds that passed for applause. Even the small, furry Nebek jumped up and down in their seats. But Minho just smiled. "Councillor Vektash," Minho said, his voice cutting through the noise. The hall slowly became quiet. "Before this vote becomes law, I have something to say." Vektash's 4 eyes narrowed. "You may speak, human, but the vote is final." Minho walked to the center of the speaking circle. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. For 300 years, humanity has served this council. We have fought your wars. We have kept your peace. We have built your trade routes and protected your ships. He paused and looked around the great hall. Thousands of alien eyes watched him. We have been your mediators when you fought among yourselves. We have been your soldiers when enemies threatened. We have been your builders when you needed infrastructure. We have done all of this because we believed in the idea of a united galaxy. Some of the delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But today, you have shown us what you really think of humanity. You see us as a threat. You want to control us. You want to take away our freedom. Minho's voice grew stronger. Well, we have an answer for you. In the viewing gallery, Sayora stood up. She pressed a button on her tablet. Across the galaxy, every human military commander received the same message at the same time. Execute departure protocol. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, Minho announced. Effective. Immediately! The hall erupted in shock. Aliens jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. But Minho was not finished. We withdraw from all treaties. We withdraw from all agreements. We withdraw from all council space. His voice carried over the chaos. Within 72 hours, every human ship, every human citizen, every human settlement will leave council territory. Councillor Vektash slammed his massive fist on the speaking podium. You cannot do this. Your colonies belong to the council now. No, Minho said quietly, but somehow everyone heard him. They belong to us, and we are taking them with us. High, above the planet, Captain Yuna received Sayora's signal on the bridge of the human flagship Determination. She had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. All ships, this is Yuna, she spoke into her communication device. Begin evacuation procedures. We have 72 hours to get everyone out. Through the great windows of the bridge, Yuna could see the massive human fleet that had been gathering. For months, cargo ships, passenger ships, military vessels, and colony ships, thousands of them, all waiting for this moment. The evacuation began immediately. On human colonies across the galaxy, families packed their belongings. Entire cities were dismantled and loaded onto ships. Factories were shut down and their equipment moved. Even the smallest human outpost received the same order: pack everything and leave. The aliens watched in shock as humanity moved with impossible efficiency. In just 3 days, settlements that had existed for centuries disappeared. The humans took everything with them: buildings, machines, computers, even the plants from their gardens. But something strange happened during the evacuation. As human ships left each system, they did not head toward Earth or any known human world. Instead, they flew toward empty space. They flew toward coordinates that showed nothing on any star chart. Back in the council hall, Minho was finishing his speech. The alien delegate sat in stunned silence. "You wanted to rule us," he said. "You wanted to control us. You thought we would submit because we had nowhere else to go." He smiled again, and this time it was not a friendly smile. "You were wrong." Jinwoo appeared at Minho's side. He whispered something in the ambassador's ear. Minho nodded. "I have just received confirmation," Minho announced. "The last human ship has left Council space. We are no longer your problem." He turned and walked toward the exit. But before he left, he stopped and looked back at the thousands of shocked aliens. "You have no idea what you have just lost," he said. "But you will learn soon enough." The great doors of the council hall closed behind him with a soft click. In the silence that followed, the aliens began to realize that something had changed forever. In the weeks that followed, council scientists tried to track the human ships. They found something impossible. The ships had not just left council space. They had disappeared into regions of space that were supposed to be empty, into the void between star systems where nothing existed. The last signal received from the human fleet was a simple message sent by Captain Yuna: "See you soon." But as the alien scientists studied their instruments, they discovered something that made their blood run cold. The empty space where humanity had gone was not empty at all. It was full of energy signatures that defied explanation. And those signatures were getting stronger. The day humanity left the council was the day the universe learned that some doors should never be opened. And humanity had just walked through one of them. 3 months had passed since humanity disappeared into the void. Counselor Tyke of the Vrex species stood in his office, looking at reports that made no sense. His green skin had turned pale with worry, and his usually perfect scales were rough from stress. The first problems started small. A trade ship here, a communication relay there. Nothing that seemed important at first. But now, 3 months later, the galaxy was falling apart. Tyke pressed a button on his desk. "Send in the trade commissioner," he said. Commissioner Jolax, a round Nybeck with orange fur, waddled into the office. His usual cheerful expression was gone. Instead, he looked tired and scared. "The numbers are bad," Jolax said without being asked. "Trade between systems is down 60%. Half the shipping routes have stopped working completely." Tyke rubbed his temple with a clawed hand. "How is that possible? We have more ships now that the humans are gone." "That's just it," Jolax said, pulling out a tablet. "We have the ships, but we don't know where to send them." The humans managed all the scheduling. They knew which routes were safe, which ones were profitable, which ones to avoid during certain seasons. Tyke stared at the Nybeck. "One species managed all of that?" "Not one species. One person." Jolax's voice was barely a whisper. "A human named Rena. She coordinated 40% of all galactic trade from her office on Luna Station. When she left, she took all her knowledge with her." The communication device on Tyke's desk buzzed. "Sir," came the voice of his assistant, "Admiral Corvin is here to see you. He says it's urgent. Admiral Corvin was a massive granite made of living rock and metal. When he entered the office, the floor shook under his weight. His usually confident voice sounded hollow. "We have a problem," Corvin said. "Pirate attacks have increased by 300%. Tyke felt his heart skip a beat. Vrex had 2 hearts, and right now both of them were racing. 300%? How? "The humans were patrolling the outer systems," Corvin explained. "Not officially. They said they were on trade missions or exploration trips, but they were keeping the pirates away. Now that they're gone—" He didn't need to finish. Tyke understood. Entire shipping lanes that had been safe for decades were now dangerous. Colonies that had never seen a pirate ship were being raided. Weekly. "But surely our own fleets can handle pirates," Tyke said. Corvin's rocky face somehow managed to look embarrassed. "We tried, but we don't know where the pirate bases are. The humans never told us. They just handled it quietly." The door burst open. Tyke's assistant, a nervous Zephyrian named Klex, flew in on his wing arms. "Sir, emergency meeting in the main hall. The Sulak and the Rethek are about to go to war." Tyke jumped up from his chair. "What? Why?" "Border dispute in the Kepler sector," Klex said, his feathers ruffled with panic. "The Sulak say the Rethek are stealing their mining rights. The Rethek say the Sulak are invading their space." Tyke ran for the door, followed by Joe Lax and Corvin. The main hall was in chaos when they arrived. Delegates from both species were shouting at each other in their native languages. The Sulak, with their blue crystalline bodies, were making sharp ringing sounds. The Rethek, who looked like giant insects, were clicking their mandibles aggressively. "Order! Order!" shouted Counselor Vektash, but nobody listened. Tyke found an old file in the council database about the Kepler sector. What he read made his blood run cold. The border between Sulak and Rethek space had been disputed for over a century. Wars had been fought, millions had died, but for the last 50 years, there had been peace. The file showed why. A human diplomat named Do Yun had been secretly mediating between the two species. Every month he had meetings with leaders from both sides. He found compromises. He prevented conflicts before they started. Do Yun was gone now, and without him, old hatreds were coming back. The fighting in the hall got worse. A Sulak delegate threw a crystalline shard at a Rethek. The Rethek responded by spitting acid that missed its target and hit a granite observer. Soon, delegates from other species were joining the fight. Tyke tried to remember how humans had handled situations like this, but he couldn't. The humans had made it look easy, but that was because they had been doing it for so long. That night, Tyke sat in his office reading reports from across the galaxy. The granites and the vapor clouds were arguing about mining rights in the asteroid fields. The Nibek were angry because their food shipments were being delayed. The Zephyrians were complaining that their messages were not being delivered. Every problem had the same cause. Something that humans used to do was no longer being done. But the strangest reports came from the border between Council space and the void where humanity had gone. Ships that approached that area reported equipment failures. Computers stopped working. Engines shut down for no reason. Most disturbing of all, the crews reported seeing things that should not exist. Lights in empty space. Shadows that moved without anything to cast them. Voices on communication channels that spoke in languages nobody recognized. Captain Wex of the exploration ship Starfinder sent the most detailed report. His ship had been trying to find the humans when everything went wrong. "We were 3 light years from the last known human position," his report said. All our instruments started going crazy. The sensors showed massive energy readings, but we couldn't see anything. Then the communications officer said she was hearing voices, not human voices, something else. The report continued. The voices were speaking in mathematical equations, not words, but numbers. Complex formulas that our computers couldn't understand. We tried to record them, but the recording equipment failed. When we turned around to leave, we found that our position had changed. We were 50 light years away from where we started, but we had only been traveling for 10 minutes. Taek put down the report and looked out his office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was gone, and with them had gone the peace, prosperity, and safety that the galaxy had enjoyed for centuries. The aliens had thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they had lost their protectors. A message came through on his private communication channel. It was from a deep space monitoring station on the edge of Council territory. "Counselor Tyke," the message said, "we are detecting massive energy spikes from the void sector. Whatever the humans found out there, it's getting stronger. And, sir, we think it's moving." Tyke felt both his hearts stop. He looked at the star charts on his wall, showing the peaceful galaxy that the Council ruled. But for the first time in 300 years, that peace felt fragile. The humans had left without explaining why they were so important. Now the aliens were learning the hard way. Every day brought new disasters. Every week brought new conflicts. And every night brought strange signals from the empty space where humanity had gone. The galaxy was discovering that humans had not just been members of the Council. They had been the glue that held civilization together. And now that glue was gone. Dr. Yila was a scientist, not a soldier. Her 8 tentacles moved gracefully over the research equipment as she studied the data that had arrived that morning. As the head of the Council's Xenoarchaeology department, she spent her days studying ancient ruins and dead civilizations. But today, she was looking at something that might explain why those civilizations had died. The data came from the abandoned human world of New Sol. When the Council fleet had arrived to claim the planet, they found something impossible. The humans were gone, but they had left something behind. A massive database hidden in the planet's core. The database was protected by encryption that would take the Council's best computers 1,000 years to break. But the humans had also left a key, a simple message that said, "For Counselor Tyek, when he is ready to learn the truth." Yila's tentacles trembled as she read the files. They contained research data collected by a human scientist named Bora over 40 years of study. The files showed ruins from dozens of worlds, all with the same strange pattern. Every ruin told the same story. A civilization would develop space travel. They would explore their local star systems. They would build great cities and powerful technologies. And then, suddenly, they would vanish without a trace. But these were not natural disasters. The ruins showed signs of something impossible. Attack from creatures that should not exist. Yila opened a file marked Pattern Analysis and felt her alien blood turn cold. The report showed 17 different civilizations that had disappeared in the last 1,000,000 years. All of them had reached the same level of technology. All of them had developed faster than light travel. And all of them had vanished within 50 years of that achievement. The images in the files showed claw marks on metal walls that could resist nuclear explosions, bite marks in asteroid mining equipment, and strange symbols burned into the hulls of ships that had been found drifting in empty space. But the most disturbing file was labeled Dimensional Breach Theory. Bora's research suggested that faster-than-light travel created tears in reality itself, and through those tears, something was watching. Yila called an emergency meeting of the Council's Science Committee. When the other scientists arrived, she shared Bora's research. The room fell silent as they looked at the images and data. "This cannot be real," said Dr. Koroth, a granite geologist. "These creatures you describe would violate the laws of physics." "So does faster-than-light travel," Yila replied. "But we do it every day." Dr. Fennec, a small Nebeck physicist, was studying the mathematical equations in Bora's files. His orange fur was standing on end with excitement and fear. "These calculations," he said with a shaking voice, "they describe holes in space-time, places where our dimension connects to somewhere else." Yila showed them the next file. It contained star charts of human space, but these were not ordinary charts. They showed the location of every faster-than-light jump point, every wormhole, every place where ships regularly moved between star systems. And overlaid on those charts were military patrol routes that made no sense. Human ships had been stationed in empty space far from any trade routes or colonies. They had been guarding places where nothing existed. They were not trade patrols, Yila realized. They were guard posts. The files contained more evidence. Reports from human military commanders about anomalous readings in deep space, requests for more ships to monitor dimensional stability, and most frightening of all, casualty reports for battles that had never been officially recorded. Commander. Wusung had filed a report 5 years ago about losing 3 ships while investigating reality fluctuations in the Vega system. The official council records showed no battles in that area. But Bora's files contained detailed sensor data showing massive energy discharges and the remains of something that was not quite matter and not quite energy. Yila found another file marked Stabilizer Network. It contained technical specifications for devices that the humans had called communication arrays. But the real design showed something very different. These were not communication devices. They were machines designed to strengthen the barriers between dimensions. The humans had built hundreds of these devices throughout council space. They were hidden inside asteroids, on the dark sides of moons, and in deep space where nobody would look for them. All of them were powered by human ships that made routine maintenance visits. Dr. Yunbi, a human physicist, had written detailed reports about the network. Her files explained that every time an alien ship made a faster-than-light jump, it created tiny cracks in reality. The stabilizers were designed to repair those cracks before they could grow large enough for something to come through. The humans were not explorers, Yila whispered to herself. They were maintenance workers. But the most important file was marked Emergency Protocols. It contained a message from Hyojin, a human temporal researcher. The message was dated just 3 days ago. If you are reading this, the message said, then humanity has left council space and you have discovered our real purpose. We were not members of your alliance. We were your guardians. For 3 centuries, we have been protecting this galaxy from entities that exist in parallel dimensions. The message continued. These entities feed on civilizations. They wait for species to develop faster-than-light travel, and then they attack through the dimensional weaknesses that such travel creates. We have been fighting them in secret, keeping them from reaching your worlds. Yila's tentacles were shaking as she read the final part of the message. But our war is not over. The entities have found a way to launch a major attack. We could not stop them and protect you at the same time. So we have left to meet them in the void between dimensions. We are going to fight them where they live. If we succeed, you will never know we were gone. If we fail, you have perhaps 50 years before. They break through completely. Use that time wisely. The message ended with coordinates that pointed to the same empty space where humanity had disappeared. Yila immediately contacted the deep space monitoring stations. What they told her confirmed her worst fears. The energy readings from human space were getting stronger every day, and they were moving. Something was coming through the dimensional barriers that humanity could no longer protect. That night, Yila called Counselor Tayek with her findings. When she finished explaining, there was a long silence on the communication channel. What do we do? Tayek finally asked. We pray that the humans win their war, Yila replied. Because if they don't, we are all going to die. As she spoke, alarms began sounding at monitoring stations across the galaxy. Ships were reporting equipment failures near the human border, and in the deep space between stars, shadows were moving. The entities that had destroyed 17 civilizations were coming, and humanity was no longer there to stop them. The Council had thought they were getting rid of a troublesome species. Instead, They had sent away the only thing standing between them and extinction. In the void between dimensions, humanity was fighting a war that the galaxy did not even know existed, and whether they won or lost would determine if civilization itself survived. 6 months after humanity vanished, the galaxy was in chaos. Wars had broken out between 12 different species, trade had collapsed, and strange things were happening at the edge of Council space. Counselor Teak stood in the emergency command center, watching displays that showed the growing crisis. Red warning lights flashed across star charts as more ships reported contact with unknown entities. The creatures that Dr. Yila had warned about were no longer hiding. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Hex, a young Zephyrian officer, "we're getting massive energy readings from Sector 7. Something big is coming through." Tyke looked at the display. Space itself seemed to be tearing open like fabric. Through the tear, he could see swirling darkness filled with shapes that hurt to look at. Then the darkness was filled with light. Human ships poured through the dimensional rift like water through a broken dam. But these were not the same ships that had left 6 months ago. They moved with impossible grace, their hulls glowing with energy that seemed to bend space around them. "Council Fleet, this is Admiral Sang-hoon of the Human Protectorate," came a voice over the communication channels. "Stand down and prepare for dimensional cleanup." Tyke grabbed the communication device. "Admiral, this is Counselor Tyke. We need to talk." "Later," Sang-hoon replied. "Right now, we have work to do." The human ships spread out across the battle zone with perfect coordination. They moved like dancers, weaving between the alien council ships without touching them. And wherever they went, the darkness retreated. Tyke watched in amazement as reality itself seemed to heal where the humans passed. The tiers in space closed. The impossible creatures that had been pouring through the rifts screamed and fled back into their own dimension. But the humans were different now. Tyke could see it even from this distance. Their ships moved in ways that defied physics. Their weapons fired beams of pure mathematics that unmade their targets rather than destroying them. When the battle was over, Admiral Sang-hoon's ship approached the Council command vessel. The man who appeared on the communication screen still looked human, but his eyes held knowledge that no mortal being should possess. "Counselor Tyke," Sang-hoon said, "we need to talk. Meet me on your ship's docking bay in 10 minutes. Tyke had never seen a human walk through solid matter before. Sang-hoon simply stepped through the wall of the docking bay as if it was not there. Behind him came 2 other humans, a woman with scars that seemed to shift and move on their own, and a man whose shadow fell in directions that had no light source. "Admiral," Tyke said, trying to keep his voice steady, "what happened to you out there?" Sang-hoon smiled, but it was not quite the same kind of smile that humans used to have. "We learned what we really are, Counselor. We learned why the universe made us the way it is." The scarred woman stepped forward. "I am Commander Minji," she said, "and this is Dr. Kyung-ho. We have been fighting a war in dimensions that your species cannot even perceive." Tyke looked at her scars. They seemed to be moving, forming patterns that almost made sense before shifting into new shapes. "What kind of war?" "The kind that determines whether reality continues to exist," Kyung-ho replied. His voice echoed strangely, as if it was coming from multiple places at once. "The entities you encountered are just scouts. The real enemy exists in the space between dimensions." Sang-hoon walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "For 6 months, we have been fighting creatures that eat civilizations for breakfast. We have seen horrors that would drive your species insane. And we have learned that this galaxy, this entire cluster of galaxies, is just one small part of a much larger war." He turned back to Tyke. "We made contact with other Guardian species, humans from different universes who have been fighting the same battle. We learned that in every reality where life develops, someone has to stand guard, and in this reality, that someone is us." Minji showed Tayak a device that looked like a small crystal. This is a dimensional anchor. It strengthens the barriers between realities. We have placed millions of them throughout Council space while you weren't looking. For 300 years, we protected you without you knowing, Sang-hoon said. We stopped invasions before they started. We repaired reality when your faster-than-light drives damaged it. We fought wars in the spaces between atoms. Tyke felt his legs give out. He sat down heavily in a nearby chair. Why didn't you tell us? Because you wouldn't have believed us, Kyung-ho said. And because knowledge of the true nature of reality tends to drive non-guardian species insane, you were safer not knowing. The communication device on Tyke's belt buzzed. It was Dr. Yila calling from the council chambers. Tyke, she said urgently, the entire council is here. They want to know what's happening. Sang-hoon nodded. We'll come with you. It's time for them to understand their new situation. The council chambers were packed when they arrived. Every species in the galaxy had sent representatives. They all wanted to know why human ships were appearing throughout their space and why the strange attacks had suddenly stopped. Sang-hoon walked to the center of the speaking circle, just as Ambassador Minho had done 6 months earlier. But unlike Minho, Sang-hoon did not need to raise his voice to be heard. His words seemed to reach every corner of the vast hall. Council members, he said, humanity has returned, but we are not the same species that left. He gestured, and the air above him filled with images. The aliens gasped as they saw battles fought in impossible spaces, creatures of living shadow, and human warriors wielding weapons made of crystallized time. We are no longer your equals, Sang-hoon continued. We are your guardians. We stand between you and forces that would unmake everything you know. Counselor Vektosh, the blue alien who had led the vote against humanity, stood up shakily. What do you want from us? Nothing that you have not already given, Sang-hoon replied. Continue to live your lives, build your civilizations, explore the stars, but understand that you do so under our protection. A Nebek delegate raised his hand. What if we refuse? Minji stepped forward and her scars flared with otherworldly light. Then you die when the next wave of entities breaks through. And there will be a next wave. There is always a next wave. Sang-hoon looked around the hall at thousands of alien faces. We offer you a choice. Accept our protection and live in peace, or reject it and face what's coming alone. How do we know you won't conquer us? Demanded a Sulak representative. Kyung-ho laughed, and the sound made reality ripple around him. Counselor, we have spent 6 months fighting beings that could destroy your entire species with a thought. Do you really think we need to conquer? You? Sang-hoon raised his hand for silence. We have no interest in ruling you. We are not conquerors. We are gardeners. We tend the garden of reality so that life can grow. A young granite delegate, barely more than a pile of pebbles, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What happens if you lose? What happens if these entities defeat you? For the first time since his return, Sang-hoon looked truly human. His face showed sadness and determination in equal measure. Then everything ends, he said simply. Not just your civilizations, but existence itself. That is why we fight. That is why we can never stop fighting. He looked directly at Tyke. The Council is welcome to continue governing the alliance of species. Trade, diplomacy, exploration, these things are still yours to manage. But the protection of reality itself is now humanity's responsibility. A voice called out from the back of the hall, How do we know you're still human? Sang-hoon smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the humans who had served the Council for 3 centuries. Because, he said, only humans are crazy enough to take on this job. The vote was unanimous. The Council accepted humanity's protection. They had no choice. The alternative was extinction. As the humans left the chambers, Taek heard Minji say to Kyung-ho, "Think they understand what we've become?" "Does it matter?" Kyung-ho replied. "We're not doing this for them. We're doing this because it's who we are." And as the human ships disappeared back into dimensions that had no names, the galaxy settled into an uneasy peace. They were safe, but they were no longer free. They had guardians now, whether they wanted them or not. 2 years had passed since humanity returned as guardians of the galaxy. The universe looked peaceful on the surface, but everyone knew the truth. Peace existed only because humans stood watch in dimensions that most species could not even imagine. General Ji-hoon sat in his office on the new human station called Haven. The station existed in 17 different dimensions at the same time, allowing humans to monitor threats that came from anywhere in the multiverse. Through his window, he could see council space spread out below him like a garden that needed constant protection. Ji-hoon was no longer entirely human. None of them were. 6 months of fighting in other dimensions had changed them all. His eyes could see through time as well as space. His mind could process information from multiple realities at once, and his body could exist in places where matter and energy meant different things. But he still remembered being human. He still cared about protecting life. That was what made them good guardians. A message came through on his communication device. It was from Captain Hae-un, who was currently stopping a war between the Rethek and the Zephyrians before it could start. "General," Hae-un's voice said, "the Rethek are backing down. They agreed to the peace terms after I showed them what happens to war-making species when they destabilize local reality." Ji-hoon smiled. Hae-un had always been good at peacekeeping, even when she was fully human. Now, with the ability to show people glimpses of other timelines where their choices led to disaster, she was practically unstoppable. Another message came from Commander Dong-yun, who was working with a newly discovered species called the Keptons. They had just developed faster-than-light travel and were about to learn why that was dangerous. "The Keptons are more advanced than most species we've encountered," Dong-hyun reported. "They actually understand dimensional theory. When I explained about the entities, they immediately asked how they could help. This was rare. Most species refused to believe in the interdimensional threat until they saw it themselves. The fact that the Keptons understood made them valuable, potential allies." Ji-hoon walked to the station's central command room, where Admiral Su-young was coordinating humanity's multi-dimensional defense network. She stood in the center of a sphere of light, her consciousness spread across dozens of realities at once. "Status report," Ji-hoon said. "All sectors secure," Su-young replied without opening her eyes. "We've prevented 3 reality incursions in the past week. The granite civilization in Dimension 7 is safe. The energy beings in Dimension 12 are learning to reinforce their own barriers. And Dimension 23 is having a tea party." Ji-hoon raised an eyebrow. Even after 2 years of this job, some things still surprised him. "Don't ask," Su-young said. "Dimension 23 is weird. The main display showed a map of local space that included dimensions most beings couldn't perceive. Green lights indicated stable areas. Yellow lights showed places that needed monitoring. Red lights meant active threats. Most of the display was green. This was the result of 2 years of constant work by humanity's Guardian fleet. They had eliminated the immediate threats and built a network of defenses that could detect problems before they became crises. But not everyone was happy with the new arrangement. "Sir," Lieutenant Minha called from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Resistance." Ji-hoon sighed. The Resistance was a group of alien species that refused to accept human protection. They called themselves the Free Alliance and claimed that humanity was enslaving the galaxy. "Put them through," Ji-hoon said. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to General Vokath, a Sulak military leader with crystalline features that seemed to cut the air around him. Behind him stood representatives from 6 other species that had rejected human guardianship. "General Ji-hoon," Vokath said, his voice ringing like broken glass. My forces have taken control of the Kepler system. We declare it free from human tyranny. Jihoon looked at the tactical display. The Kepler system was near a known dimensional weak point. If the resistance damaged the local space-time structure with their military activities, they could open a breach for the entities. General Vokath, Jihoon said calmly, you are putting your entire species at risk. The Kepler system contains a dimensional anchor. If you damage it, you will create an opening for hostile forces. Vokath's crystalline face showed contempt. We do not believe your lies about interdimensional monsters. We will not be ruled by fear. Soo-young opened her eyes and looked at the display. General, she said quietly, something just shifted in Dimension 8. The entities have noticed the disturbance in Kepler. Jihoon made a decision that he hoped he would never have to make. General Vokath, you have 10 minutes to evacuate the Kepler system. After that, we will enforce the dimensional quarantine. You cannot stop us all, Vokath replied. We have allies throughout the galaxy. The communication ended. Jihoon looked at his officers, seeing his own sadness reflected in their faces. They had hoped that all species would accept protection willingly. Orders, sir? Asked Captain Gyeong-soo, the station's tactical officer. Deploy containment protocol. 7, Jihoon said. If they damage the dimensional anchor, we seal the entire system. Gyeong-soo nodded grimly. He understood what that meant. If the resistance triggered an entity incursion, humanity would have to cut the Kepler system off from normal space-time. Everyone in that system would be trapped in a bubble dimension where they could not threaten the rest of the galaxy. It would save billions of lives. But it would also doom everyone in the Kepler system to isolation until the entities stopped trying to break through. The next few hours were tense. Human ships surrounded the Kepler system, waiting to see what the resistance would do. Meanwhile, Soo-young monitored the dimensional barriers for signs of stress. Sir, she reported, the entities are gathering in Dimension 8. They're waiting for an opening. Just then, alarms sounded throughout the station. Dimensional breach in the Kepler system, Minha announced. The resistance has damaged the anchor. Jihoon watched the displays as reality tore open in the Kepler system. Dark shapes began pouring through the breach, moving toward the inhabited worlds. Execute containment, he ordered. Human ships moved with impossible speed, weaving patterns of energy around the entire system. Space-time folded in on itself, creating a pocket dimension that was disconnected from the rest of the galaxy. The entities were trapped inside with the resistance, but they could no longer spread to other systems. Transmission from General Vokath, Minha reported. The Sulak leader appeared on screen again, but now his crystalline features were cracked with fear. Behind him, Jihoon could see the impossible shapes of the entities attacking his ships. Help. Us, Vokath whispered. They're real. The monsters are real. Jihoon felt his heart break. I'm sorry, General. You made your choice. We cannot risk opening the containment to rescue you. But we believe you now, Vokath pleaded. We understand. Understanding is not enough, Jihoon replied sadly. Some lessons cost more than we want to pay. The transmission ended as the entities overwhelmed the resistance fleet. That night, Jihoon found himself in the station's memorial garden, where humanity remembered all the beings they had failed to save. He was joined by teacher Ji-won, who ran the station school for the children of guardian families. The Kepler incident will be studied for generations, Ji-won said softly. It proves what happens when species reject protection. A young voice spoke from behind them. Teacher Ji-won, why did the aliens choose to fight the monsters alone? Jihoon turned to see a human child, maybe 8 years old, with eyes that already showed signs of dimensional awareness. The children born on Haven were different from their parents, adapted to life between realities, because they were proud, Ji-won explained gently. They thought being free was more important than being safe. But they weren't really free when the monsters ate them, the child observed. No, Jiwan agreed. They weren't. The child looked up at Jihoon with those strange, knowing eyes. Is that why we do this job? To keep people free by keeping them safe? Jihoon knelt down to the child's level. What do you think? The child was quiet for a moment, processing concepts that would drive most adults insane. I think freedom means having choices. Dead people don't have choices, so keeping people alive is the first kind of freedom. Jihoon smiled, feeling genuinely human for the first time in months. That's exactly right. As he looked out at the stars, Jihoon thought about the choice humanity had made. They could have abandoned the galaxy to its fate. They could have used their power to rule rather than protect. But instead, they chose to be gardeners of reality, tending the spaces between dimensions so that life could flourish. It was not the choice that most species would make. But then again, most species were not crazy enough to fight interdimensional monsters for the sake of strangers. In the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol. In other dimensions, human guardians fought battles that would never be recorded in history books. And on worlds throughout the galaxy, alien children grew up safe and free, never knowing how close they lived to the edge of everything. The day humanity left the Council was the day the universe learned fear. But it was also the day the universe learned hope.